Welcome to this edition of Rainer on Leadership. My name is Thom Rainer. I'm usually joined by Sam Rainer. Sam Rainer is on assignment. I don't know if I miss my son or not. Quite frankly, he's given me so much trash talk lately that I'm glad that I just have one other person here who is not my son. Now, Alex Goodwin, don't take that to mean I wouldn't want you to be my son. You're plenty young enough. How old are you, Alex, by the way?
I'm 32.
You are younger than my youngest son. That's how incredibly old I am. I have three sons, and you are younger. I mean,
Yeah,
my youngest son is 37 years old, and Sam, who does this podcast, is
yeah.
42. So how
Oh
did you
man.
do this at this age? The audience doesn't even know what this is, but we're going to introduce
Yeah,
it in just a moment. Well, we'll talk more about that.
appreciate it.
Let me go ahead and introduce Alec. He's the co-founder of the Institute for Bible Reading and co-creator of Immerse. If you haven't heard us talk about Immerse, the Bible reading experience, you need to go back to that particular podcast. Uh, he's also done Immerse the Reading Bible, which was winner of the 2022 ECPA Bible of the Year Award. That's pretty incredible. For those of you who don't know, that's Evangelical Christian Publishers Association. It is the award in that particular area. So congratulations on that, Alex. And that's a pretty big deal.
Thank you. It was very exciting to find out about it.
Alex counts himself as one of the many Christians who have struggled to read the Bible and believes that changing how we interact with Scripture can help us become immersed in its transformational story. So, pastors and other church leaders, hang on, because one of the things that you want to do, we've talked about it again and again, is get your congregation in the Word. So you be listening to what Alex has to say. You're going to absolutely love some of his insights. I do want to thank California Baptist University. Please hear me well. They have an incredible experience. Yes, they do offer for high school students to go to the university online. Okay, but there's a catch to it that's so good. First of all, you're with other college students online. It's not just with high school sophomores, juniors, and seniors, but the first course is free. And every subsequent course is only $166 per credit hour. That's opposed to $613 for what is usual. So your high school student can get a lot of college credit. They probably want to go to California Baptist afterwards, but it will transfer to many other universities as well. Pastors and other church leaders, get this information to the students in your church. Let them know about it, because it is a great opportunity for them to be trained ahead of college while in high school at a great Christian university. Well, Alex, tell us something about yourself. I mean, I've given our audience the formal introduction. You're co-founder of this, and you got this Bible of the Year award and all those great things. But tell us something about yourself that just whether it's personal or whatever you feel comfortable sharing with our audience.
Sure. Well, I'm in beautiful Colorado Springs. From where I'm sitting right now, I can look out the window and see the Front Range and Pikes Peak. And let's see, I'm a Colorado guy. I grew up on the East Coast, but this feels more like home to me. And so in the summertime, I'm out hiking and biking. And in the wintertime, I'm out snowboarding. I'm just a total stereotype, I guess you could say.
Well, I'm the other kind of stereotype. I am looking at white sand, emerald water, and palm
Ooh,
trees.
that's my other love. I can't blame you there.
I am on a little island in the Gulf of Mexico that faces the west called
Mm.
Cape San Blas. And yeah,
Maybe
I don't
we
want to
can
get away.
switch
I don't want
spots
to get away
sometime.
from this podcast and enjoy you, but I'll have something to do once we're done.
Yeah, yeah, I can't blame you. And right after mountains, the ocean and the sand is right after that for me. I
You
love
got it.
those.
Hey, I want to talk to you about your book. And I really want our listeners and viewers at YouTube to hear and watch you talk about the book. Talk to us about the Bible Reset. That's the name of the book, the Bible Reset. What prompted you to write on the topic? And just tell us why you want people to hear this message, Alex.
Yeah, so my book is really targeted and aimed at Christians who are struggling to read Scripture and engage with Scripture. And I count myself as one of those people. In a lot of ways, I was writing to my former self 10 years ago, who grew up in the church, loved Jesus, opened up my Bible, and just couldn't seem to make heads or tails of it. And so it just kind of became this thing that started evaporating into the background of my faith. And any Bible I got, I kind of just relied on my pastor for during a sermon or to, uh, to explain it to me. And the Bible just kind of became this foreign object. And so I wanted to write this book to let people know that they're not alone in that struggle, and that there's a lot of us, all you pastors who are listening, I'm sure you're aware that large portions of your congregation are just struggling with this Bible. It's old, it's foreign. A lot of people don't really know what to do with it. It's got lots of different kinds of literature in it that we're not really familiar with, and they're just struggling. So number one, I want people to know that they're not alone in that struggle,
Right.
and number two, I want them to know that in many ways it's not their fault, that we've actually inherited a lot of kind of built-in obstacles to deep Bible engagement that make it more difficult than it needs to be. And so what I try to do in this book is sort of call those things out and expose them, and then propose a way out. It's not the Bible minor tweak or minor adjustment. It's the reset, and it's questioning some things that we assume about the Bible that we've inherited through Bible format, Bible practices, those sorts of things that stand to be questioned and stand to be potentially overhauled. So it's also a roadmap to a fresh new way of engaging Scripture.
We're talking to Alex Goodwin about his book, The Bible Reset. Alex, you mentioned the formatting, and it can hinder our understanding of the text. Now, I know I've never seen the autographer. I've never seen the original manuscripts. I don't know anybody who has, but I've seen at least pictures of those that were fairly close to the original manuscripts, both in the Hebrew, some Aramaic, in the New Testament, the Greek. And it doesn't look like our Bible. One thing is different languages,
No.
but definitely a different format. So
Yep.
when we talk about the format of Scripture, we're not doing anything to talk badly about the Bible. That is a human addition to what was given to us through Scripture. So talk to us about this formatting issue and how that could possibly be a hindrance.
Yes. So when I got into the Bible world, it was this huge education curve for me to kind of understand the history of the Bible as a book or as an artifact, a collection of writings. I'd never really thought about it before. I just had a Bible and I just took it for granted. It is what it is. Obviously, people have been adjusting and working on the Bible as an artifact for centuries or millennia. But I think the major moment for me came when my mind was just blown when I considered the fact that chapters and verses weren't kind of
We're there
an
to begin
inherent part of
with.
the text. Yeah, like I just never thought about that before, and I dove into the history of them. Chapter numbers came in around 1200 AD when a scholar named Stephen Langton wanted to create a Bible commentary. And so he needed just a way to break up books into relatively uniform passages to where he could say in his commentary, okay, I'm talking about chapter 3 now, chapter 4 now. And then verses weren't until about 300 years later when another scholar needed to create a Bible concordance where he needed to direct people to a hyper-specific portion of Scripture to find a word that they were looking for. And then, these two systems got paired together, and we were off to the races for 500 years. Kind of every single Bible was had these reference tools included in them, and then they kind of opened the floodgates for section headings and cross references and footnotes and callouts and like all of these things, which on their own are meant to help people in various ways, but you know, if you were to open the Bible with kind of objective eyes, you would say, wow, this is a tool for looking things up and finding things quickly rather than sitting and relaxing and reading. And
Mm,
so that's the first kind of whole section of my book is the format is built for a certain thing, and that certain thing is not reading, it's referencing. It's
that's
finding
good.
things. And it for a lot of people, it's an information overload experience. We've had so many people tell us, am I allowed to turn the page before I look up all the cross references? Do I read the notes as I go? Do I finish the page and then read all the notes? Like, what do I do with this? And it's something about the Bible that's so taken for granted. Like, yeah, this is just what the Bible looks like. But all these things are modern additives and they don't have to be in there. And so I think that was a huge revelation for me.
I have memories of opening a Hebrew Bible for the first time, and my Hebrew professor says, "Go to the back and read right to left." And
Mm,
there was no spaces either. And there were no
yeah,
vowels, just vowel points. I'm thinking, oh,
yeah,
this is going to be a tough class. I made
yeah.
it
I
through
bet you
Hebrew
didn't
and Greek.
curl up for your devotions and read that one by the
Yeah,
fire.
that would be fun.
Yeah,
We're talking to Alex Goodwin, and I want you to look in the show notes at his book, The Bible Reset, and where you can get it and purchase it. Talk to us about the difference between biblical literacy and biblical fluency. Is one better than the other? Is one good, one bad? Talk to us about the differences.
yeah. This on the surface can feel like a semantics issue, but I think it's an important distinction. So in the Bible world, you hear all about falling Bible literacy rates, and people aren't as biblically literate as before, and those sorts of things. And you look into kind of how they quantify that or how they test people on that, and most of the time it's things like how many of the 12 disciples can you name, or how many of the 10 commandments can you recite from memory. And I would read those and I think, really, like, that's the bar, is kind of expertise in Bible trivia. Like, that feels like a low bar for me. And so I guess here's how I see it. I feel like they're both very important. Bible literacy is important, as is Bible fluency. It feels to me like Bible literacy is kind of a prerequisite for Bible fluency. Of course, you need to understand the facts, know the things that are included in Bible literacy, but that's so that you can get to Bible fluency. I liken it to learning a language. You know, I took a foreign language in high school from eighth grade through 12th grade, and conjugated a lot of verbs, memorized a lot of vocabulary. By the time I graduated, I could maybe get through a very basic conversation around a very narrow topic. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
was a little bit literate, but I was nowhere near fluent. And so, you
Makes
contrast that
sense.
with living for a year in a foreign country and just sort of immersing yourself in something and passively absorbing it through that immersion. And that feels more like what fluency is to me. So for me, biblical fluency is, can you speak off the cuff about the Sermon on the Mount for 5 or 10 minutes? Or can you just give an overview of the book of Ruth, just talking casually about it? And I feel like that really should be the bar, is fluency. And it's sort of a different sort of memorization. It's not
I
word for
like that.
word memorization of a verse or a passage. It's just getting something deep down into your bones. And I feel like that should really be the goal of our Bible engagement.
I like that. Let's look at another differences: Bible reading and Bible study. How do you distinguish between the two?
Yeah, this might be a little bit controversial because, especially here in America, we love our Bible study. And I think it's super important. It's a little bit like literacy. I think it's very important to understand passages in their context and kind of dive deep on things. For me, I think of Bible study as coming to the text with a certain agenda. I want to get something out of this. I want to learn more about this passage or the context, or potentially trace a theme through multiple books, those sorts of things. And all that is good. It's important. But I feel like in some ways we've kind of become obsessed with study at the expense of just reading, because you can learn a lot more different types of things by just reading, by just sitting in your easy chair and reading a letter of Paul's from start to finish, or reading, if you're really ambitious, maybe a gospel from start to finish, or a large chunk of it, and just kind of letting it wash over you, abandoning your agendas about what this text needs to do for me today, and just kind of letting God do his thing through the text. And so I feel like both of them need to coexist. You need to read big, get a view of the whole structure of a book, the whole arc of a narrative, those sorts of things, and then go back and study and kind of oscillate between the two.
That's really good. That's I, Most new Christians, when they're told to read something, you may be referred to the Gospel of John or certainly one of the four Gospels. I made up my own mind when I was a new Christian as an adult to read Philippians through. And,
Mm.
you know, that that was a good starting point for me. I didn't learn much about the life of Christ at all, but I found out what the Christian life is like in the positive. And I just got
Mm.
rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice going over and over again. I read it more for fluency than I did
Mm.
literacy. I needed a lot more literacy training at the time though, but it was a fun
Yes.
one to read. Hey, I'm really
Yes.
curious about this because I do not know the answer to it. I want to hear from you. 6-act drama of scripture. What is that?
Yes, this was another kind of game changer for me because I grew up again in the church, in Sunday school, kind of in Christian culture. I knew a lot of Bible stories. I knew, Daniel in the lion's den. I knew about miracles and Adam and Eve and all that sort of stuff, but they weren't connected in any sort of way for me. I didn't really have kind of a grand view of how the Bible works. It felt sort of like this anthology of things that were sort of isolated from each other, and then Jesus got here and made everything better. And that was kind of like my loose understanding of what the Bible was. And so another thing that was just a total revelation for me was this idea that the Bible is connected by this great narrative from Genesis to Revelation. And I feel like the 6-act drama framework, there's a number of frameworks out there that can help you kind of get an overarching view of the biblical narrative. The 6-act drama one has been the most helpful for me. But it goes from act one, which is the creation story, God kind of making his home here on earth with us. Act two would be the rebellion from that vision and that intention of God. Act three is the story of Abraham's family and the nation of Israel and their calling to begin restoring what God had initially created. Act four, I call it in my book the upside down victory of the unexpected Messiah. So it's a bit of a mouthful, but it's connected to the story that came before. It's not a diversion from that. And then Act five, I like to call the already and the not yet, which you can read more about in the book. And then Act six is called God Comes Home. And
Mm.
I feel like it's such a it was such a helpful framework for me to understand wherever I'm reading in scripture, I'm in this act of the story, and there are certain things that may or may not have happened yet. This is kind of where it relates to, obviously, Act 4 with Jesus is the crux of the whole story. It's the climax of the whole story.
So
So
if
are we
I'm
before
listening
the
correctly,
climax or after?
we had 3 Old Testament acts and 3 New Testament acts.
That's correct. Yep.
That's good stuff. That is good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then, just one other detail is that it's called the 6-act drama of scripture, not the 6-act story. And it's called drama because we're in it. We're actors in it. The
Mm.
story hasn't finished yet. We're kind of in this Act 5 space after Jesus and the early church, but before God, brings the final consummation of the story. And we have roles to play. We're actors in it. And that's another thing that I write about in the book.
I like that. All right, last question, Alex.
Sure.
How would you advise a Christian who wants to read the Bible more but really doesn't know where to start? Let's get most of Christians, especially most of American Christians, in that one.
Yes, yes. So I write about this in the book a little bit. I say, listen, I've proposed a lot of different changes here, and I've read books like this where there's 45 different changes that are suggested, and I don't know where to start. So my first thing would be to get something called a reader's Bible, which you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. We've created one called Immerse, which you can look up, which
Immerse
won the
is
ECPA
really
award.
good. If Sam
Yes,
were here, he'd tell you about taking a men's group through Immerse at his church. It's a great
yes.
experience for him.
Yeah, we've been grateful for Sam's feedback on that, and we always love hearing stories. So a reader's Bible is just a Bible that does away with all those modern additives and sets it up to read more like a novel, more like a regular book. And so you just sit down and you read things at length. You get to see the literature, those sorts of things. Like I said, we created Immerse, but there's a number of different types of readers editions in various translations. that you can check out. So I think that would be number one. And then number two would be read the Bible and discuss it with other people. So much of the advice I feel like that comes out kind of hinges on individual habit formation. And that's just a hard thing to sustain. And so I think one of the things that I propose in the book is to think of the Bible and approach it communally more like a book club than a Bible study.
Mm.
Read a large chunk of it and then just gather. Immerse comes with a few discussion questions, and they're like, what did you notice for the first time? What was something that was confusing to you? There's no like right or wrong answers. It's just kind of sharing your impressions of the text, and having kind of an organic discussion around it. So if you do those two things, I think that you're well on your way to a more vibrant and immersive reading experience.
Good stuff. Good stuff, Alex. And I know our listeners and viewers have their own favorite translations. I moved to the NLT 4 or 5 years ago, and I absolutely love it. So I will be one of those advocates. But there are a lot of good translations out there, and I don't want to suggest that I have the only one that is good. But I really love my NLT. Alex Goodwin, thank you for being here, the author of the Bible Reset. I'm glad you're in Colorado looking at the Pikes Peak out your window. And as I told you pre-show, I am at Cape San Blas looking out at the beach and the water. So we both have two different views. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. This was great.
Hey, we want to wrap this up by telling you about the Tyndale book, The Courage for Life Bible Study for men. And then there's another one for women. Within the pages of the Bible, you'll discover the 7 steps to courage designed to transform your life. It has similar content. They're used in small groups or devotionals, Sunday school classes, but a whole lot more. You're going to love it. It brings to the forefront individuals and events that demonstrate courage in action. Resources not just limited to the Bible. They have icons that you can scan and get a lot more information. Look in the show notes, Courage for Life Study Bible, or you can go to courageforlifebible.com. And either one of those, remember, there's one for men and one for women. As always, thank you for being a part of this Church Answers podcast named Rainer on Leadership. Thank you, Alex Goodwin, for coming from Colorado to Florida as Lana produces this in Idaho. So we're heavily weighted toward the west now with only me on the east side. So thank you for being here, and thank you, listeners and viewers, as always. And if you happen to be at YouTube, give us a rating and subscribe. If you're listening to us on any of your podcast apps, give us a rating and review. Always, thank you, audience, pastors, and other listeners for being a part of Rainer on Leadership. We'll see you in the next episode. Hey, folks, this is a PS to our podcast. We got some exciting stuff that we want to offer you absolutely for free. Sam, when you think about predictive factors in a church's growth, if you take out demographics, what are some things that come to mind? Just two. I mean, don't give me a list of 10. Just 2 or 3 things that come to mind on predictive growth of a church.
Well, evangelism and whether the church is doing it or not.
Bingo.
And then I will add, is it an ongoing evangelism emphasis?
Double bingo. And maybe something about leadership and their commitment to that. So all of the above.
Evangelistic churches have evangelistic pastors. Is the staff, is the lead pastor doing the work themselves?
We have a free download for you, and it's actually a sheet that you can self-score. You answer 20 questions, anywhere from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And we come back and we predict what your growth rate is going to be for the next year in worship attendance. It's not a perfect tool, but it's a good tool. There's a link to that for the attendance predictor. Look in the show notes. You'll absolutely love it. That's cool. We'll see you soon.